Hi everyone, I'm Anya Parampil and this is Redlines. My guest today is Afshin Rattansi. He's a friend of the Grayzone and host of the show Going Underground on RT UK. Afshin, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. What a privilege.
Let's start with news about Brexit. The UK's Information Commission recently announced results of a report which found the British consulting firm Cambridge Analytica was not responsible for influencing the vote to leave the European Union in 2016. How does that compare with what establishment pro-EU politicians and media have been telling the public for the last 4 years?
This is like when US agencies of state say the Russians actually didn't elect Donald Trump. There hasn't been any news about that here. You're over there on the East Coast of the United States, suddenly informing me that Cambridge Analytica, which was on the headlines of every television station here as being the main provocateur that caused the Brexit vote, the fact is it didn't. And of course, anyone with some semblance of understanding the way society works, the way class structures work, austerity works, would have realized that a few Facebook targeted adverts through an agency like Cambridge Analytica, which was a kind of, what are they, PR firms, marketing firms, they're not the reason that Britain voted in its biggest vote in history to leave the European Union. There must have been more structural reasons. So the fact that this report has come out saying Brexit was not a creation of a marketing agency, it should be no surprise. And yet, I mean, to name one outlet, Channel 4 News, considered a progressive news outlet here on ITV, or made by ITN, one of the largest news and current affairs producers, day after day they were telling us it was Cambridge Analytica. I think no one will even know about the story you just mentioned to me.
Well, of course, the implication in blaming Cambridge Analytica for the vote to leave the European Union is to imply that the average Briton had no reason to vote to leave otherwise. So you mentioned structural issues. Just recap, because we don't really hear about this perspective much in the United States. Why do you believe Britons, as you said, voted in the largest vote in their history to exit the EU?
So divorced are elites from normal, everyday people in this country that they were so shocked about the Brexit vote. Rather like, I suppose, people in the United States were shocked that a man saying he was going to abolish the NAFTA free trade agreement could ever win the White House, Donald Trump. And actually, Donald Trump got rid of NAFTA. The point is that over year after year, the European Union was seen as a neoliberal organization that was not benefiting average people in Britain. It was benefiting the financial services industry. It was benefiting all those who are in power, not the majority of the population. So, of course, the reasons are relatively clear as to why there began to be a hatred of the European Union. That, of course, tied up to a right wing nationalism that has been fostered by a press obsessed with jingoism, which always said the problems within British society all relate to Europe. So once you have an alliance of those who are working class, who feel that neoliberal institutions are destroying them, plus a jingoistic right-wing elite class imagination, unite the two of them, they're going to win the Brexit referendum.
What exactly is the status of Brexit? It's quite confusing for people, I think, in the United States to understand. And has the coronavirus outbreak impacted negotiations at all?
Well, I have to say, after the Brexit referendum, and I covered it, I couldn't help feeling that elites will always find a way to manipulate the situation so that Brexit doesn't happen. Other countries in Europe, Portugal, France, um, a whole number of them, Denmark, they voted kind of to leave the European Union in previous referendums. All were nobbled in some way by elites because the whole idea of the European Union, based as it is on you're not supposed to have state aid to industries, you're not supposed to have anything that resembles ideas of progressive socialism in their economies, those were all nobbled. So there was, for a time, an idea that the British civil service, of whom come from the elites, were going to stop this largest ever democratic vote. Today, we are extending the Brexit negotiations by a month, as far as I understand it. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, uh, from the liberal elites, as it were, who's always been a pro European, even when he was writing articles against the European Union before he was fired from the newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, that he used to write for. It's a complete muddle over what exactly is happening with Brexit. They keep trying to talk about trade deals that they have negotiated somehow post Brexit. We interviewed, a tiny country like the Faroe Islands, and Britain was trying to trumpet, we've made this deal. Only in the past few days, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House over there, has been saying that the food standards, I think, they don't match with British food standards, so there won't be an immediate trade deal with the United States. The point is, January the 1st, as far as the current situation is, Britain will have lorry parks across southern England because there'll have to be massive customs operations for all the food, for all the massive trade done with the European Union. There will be problems in Ireland. There is chaos on the cards. And as for the actual negotiations themselves, maybe coronavirus has helped give both Brussels and London an excuse to say we need a bit more time to organize how tariffs and trade can be organized for the benefit of both parties.
Do you fear that Britain could be trading an outsized influence from the rest of Europe over its own sovereign policies for the United States to step in and play that role? We already see Boris Johnson and Donald Trump really working to strengthen relations between the US and UK.
Well, yeah, Trump has been tweeting in favor of Boris Johnson, I understand, and maybe he could pull a rabbit out of the hat at the last minute before he maybe even leaves in November after your election and say there has been some kind of treaty that is going to be signed by executive order. Who knows? No, I think it has to go through Congress if there's going to be a large scale trade treaty. I think those on the progressive side of politics would say that Britain removing itself from the European Union does not necessitate it becoming a further vassal state of the United States. It could mean that it is allowed to organize its trade and its structural investment in infrastructure in a way very different to that allowed by European Union rules, especially, for instance, in the field of the nationalization, democratization of crucial industries privatized by Mrs. Thatcher in the 1980s, Tony Blair in the 1990s. So it doesn't mean necessarily that the United States is just going to take over British trade regulations. The big scare here is the so-called chlorinated chicken you have in the United States. Anyone from Britain who's eaten food in your country will automatically start criticizing it, no matter how organic it is. But it isn't a necessity, Brexit, that Britain automatically becomes subsumed by the regulatory uh, systems that organize your food industry, chemicals industry, pharmaceutical industries, and so on.
I want to pivot to a discussion of WikiLeaks because we were discussing, we're talking about Cambridge Analytica. Of course, in the United States, we were also told that Cambridge Analytica played a major role in the election of Donald Trump. But another focus of those trying to explain away the loss of Hillary Clinton was WikiLeaks due to its release of the Democratic National Committee emails, and it's really been demonized in the United States. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is facing trial in the UK. His extradition hearings recently wrapped up. From your vantage point, what did his case and his trial teach us about the state of the British justice system? Did he receive a fair trial?
Well, if anyone thought that there has been some kind of social mobility, some kind of change in the establishment in Britain over the past decades, I mean, this hearing in London at the Old Bailey for decisions over whether to extradite the founder of WikiLeaks to a Virginia court has shown how strong elites are. I must give a shout out to former British Ambassador Greg Murray, Juan Passarelli, Taylor Hudak, Tariq Haddad, Mohammed El-Mazi, and others, because without them, we wouldn't have known what was going on in the hearing. As you can imagine, my program going underground, we didn't get video access to what was happening in the hearing. Others have written about how difficult it was made to be able to even cover the hearing. And I think it's been an astonishing trial come hearing, showing how the military-industrial complex here in Britain, together with the United States, works hand in hand together to destroy justice. The idea that Amnesty International, by no means always a great defender of human rights, it has to be said. It's often come under some spotlights of connivance between it and the US military-industrial complex. It never made Julian Assange a prisoner of conscience. Amnesty International was banned from the hearing. So was Reporters Without Borders for a certain amount of time during the hearing. 30, maybe 40 NGOs internationally not allowed to see the way that a man who, according to the UN Special Rapporteur Niels Melzer, said is tortured by the British government and your government and the Ecuadorian government and the Swedish government. I mean, the fact that this could be happening in London just kind of encapsulated that nothing kind of has changed in terms of the establishment of those who go to the private schools, who go to the, the presiding judge who was promoted by a judge in the first few hearings. Her name is Vanessa Baraitser. Her boss, in the past few days, promoted to be at the High Court, a certain Lady Emma Arbuthnot. I know the Grayzone has been covering her links, and especially her husband's links, her husband being a former Tory defence minister, linked to entities which feature in the WikiLeaks revelations about things those in authority did not want us to know. This is obviously not justice in any way. So it's actually terrifying.
And it's a case which has extreme implications for press freedom in the United States and the UK. How did establishment media in Britain cover it?
Yeah, they just didn't cover it at all, just as they didn't cover the Cambridge Analytica revelation that they didn't actually cause Brexit. There was, there was apparently the state-mandated BBC. There was apparently a reporter there at the hearing. I don't know who he or she was, but the BBC did not really cover it. An old foreign correspondent of theirs, not a great foreign correspondent, some might say. He was there at Gulf War One, trumpeting like a stenographer. I remember it at the time, Gulf War One. John Simpson, he, to his credit, did say, why have not more people not covering this? It obviously has implications for press freedom. Yeah, I mean, if Vanessa Baraitser, she judges in January 2021 that Julian Assange can be extradited to Virginia, it means until the appeal goes through, any journalist that reveals things the United States doesn't like, it doesn't matter what nationality they are subject to U.S. law, U.S. jurisdiction, something that I would presume other members like Russia and China on the UN Security Council will say, no, it doesn't work like that.
People might not be surprised that the conservative government of Boris Johnson is enabling the trial and persecution of Assange. But what exactly has been the position of his opposition, particularly Labour leader Keir Starmer?
Well, in fairness to Boris Johnson, he is a former journalist. I would have thought, and I've interviewed his father many, many times, who's a libertarian. He was a Tory former European Union official, but he is a libertarian. And I should say there are libertarians on the right who defend Julian Assange. As for, and of course, it is known that Tory prime ministers, I only have to think of David Cameron, once said about the brutal killing of an Irish civil rights lawyer who he tried to get some justice for. David Cameron, on the right, was saying, you don't realize what dark forces there are in British society, in the British elites, that prevent even a prime minister doing anything. So I don't know whether Boris Johnson wants something to happen vis-a-vis the freedom of Julian Assange. As for Sir Keir Starmer, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind. I met him at before he became prime minister at a BBC debate program, the top debate program here, and he refused to shake my hand, which is very odd because Sir Keir Starmer and the others, these are establishment people. It was an establishment news program. Very strange. Even the Tory government minister looked at him and looked at me thinking, that's a bit strange. Could it be because Sir Keir Starmer is so intimately involved with the intelligence services in this country? I know the Grayzone has published questions as regards the leader of the Labour Party who replaced Jeremy Corbyn. He was Director of Public Prosecutions when the infamous emails that are now being leaked suggesting to Sweden they must uphold allegations of sex crimes against Julian Assange, all of which have been dropped, and the Swedish authorities appear to want to have been dropped. He was there. He's the guy who socially interacts with the head of MI5 after saying, you know what, we don't want any prosecution of the security services here in terms of their affiliation to torture of Binyam Mohammed, who is in Guantanamo Bay. Sir Keir Starmer, time and time again, who masquerades as a human rights lawyer, has been associated with the security services. His election, it should add to becoming leader of the Labour Party, he refused to say who was bankrolling him. We now know who was bankrolling him. It was our version of APAC. There was a guy called Sir Trevor Chin, who is head of BICOM, which is our version of the Israeli lobbying firm, lobbying agency. He has close relations with all these different areas of the security state. And whereas Jeremy Corbyn and his former Shadow Home Secretary, I think, and I think even his Shadow Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Corbyn, very much someone who did belatedly, it has to be said. He said very little about Julian Assange, in fairness, but he did belatedly say, this is about press freedom. Sir Keir Starmer, nothing. In fact, Sir Keir Starmer, if anything, has been seeking to revoke licenses for TV companies who try to cover the case.
Starmer's links to the security services may have been highlighted this week during a debate over a security bill in British Parliament. I saw reports that he was whipping members of Labour to abstain from a vote which would increase the powers of the security services, while Corbyn and others actually defied that line and voted against it. Can you tell us anything more about that debate and bill?
Okay, this is so shocking it may seem unbelievable to viewers. In fairness to Starmer, not even members of the security services really want the power to torture, rape, and murder trade union activists in Britain. But that's what the stakes are of this bill. This bill would immunize the prosecution of our security services if they murder, rape, or assassinate people on the left. Now, clearly that seems amazing. The FBI don't have that right. They're not allowed to do that, theoretically. And Sir Keir Starmer, he wouldn't vote against it. And not only that, he told his MPs not to vote against a bill that would do this, leading to some honourable exceptions who said, there's no way we can be an MP for the Labour Party in this country and say that members of MI5 and MI6 can murder, rape, or torture trade unionist activists, or even Labour MPs. Who knows who else? Why Boris Johnson wants to bring this in, I'm not quite sure. It came about in Parliament just as new revelations were coming out about MI5 secret agents who had fathered children with environmental activists undercover. These are the kinds of stories about the security state that are emanating, and Sir Keir Starmer clearly on a very different side to some would say British history, if going back to Magna Carta and beyond.
I've also seen complaints that Starmer doesn't actually seem to know what it means to act as an opposition figure. I also saw Starmer out. The hashtag was trending on Twitter this week. What does that sentiment come from? Is he opposing the Conservative government in any meaningful way?
I mean, to give him the benefit of the doubt, there is a myth that the Labour Party in Britain has been anti-neoliberal, anti-neocolonial, when in fact Labour, and of course I think most people around the world know about Tony Blair, leader of the Labour Party, his actions over Iraq. There's a myth that Labour has been this great anti-colonial party. But Keir Starmer, taking the cue from his pollsters that all he needs to do is wait for Boris Johnson to fail and then uh, slowly become president, sorry, not president, prime minister of Britain. I mean, that seems to be his attitude. So there was something here about closing bars at 10 o'clock at night. There's no scientific advice or modeling that shows that by closing a bar at 10 o'clock at night instead of 11 o'clock at night, you're going to reduce coronavirus transmission. In fact, if anything, what happens is young people then leave the bars and then go to their own houses where the transmission tends to occur, according to latest data. Again, Starmer flip-flopped on it and then didn't vote against the government's line that we should close the bars at 10 o'clock. It's this kind of thing again and again and again where he doesn't really say the government, he doesn't really tell his MPs to vote against the government. And you have to note how far they will go. I mean, in the leadership campaign for the Labour Party, the person he's appointed shadow foreign secretary is the one who said, we should never condemn Israel, even if it commits atrocities against Palestinians. Keir Starmer has come out with astonishing levels of, we want to work with the government. We want to work with the government all the time, again and again and again, even though the government arguably is carrying out unbelievable assaults on civil liberties.
Is there any hope, Afshin, that a true progressive left-wing leader such as Jeremy Corbyn can rise in the party once again and even perhaps win the prime ministership? Or is Britain just on this very dark path? That's how it feels every time I read about the UK, honestly.
Well, the Labour Party was founded by trade unionists, and Len McCluskey, the leader of one of the largest trade unions, took 10% took a 10% discount of money to the Labour Party, Labour being funded by the trade unions, saying he wants to fund new activist groups and those seeking social justice and so on, rather than just giving it to the Labour Party. Having said that, I'm not sure how strong that is. I mean, he's considered a bit of a firebrand left-wing Labour leader. Shouldn't he have just withdrawn all his working class members' money from a party that appears not to want to vote against the murdering of trade union activists? Everyone is scared. Everyone appears a little scared, and there was a cleansing of the progressive left from the parliamentary Labour Party, which anyway was dominated by the neoliberal right and the Blairites. Certainly nothing on the horizon at the moment as regards anything in terms of government that can be done progressively. If anything, hopes about progressive politics will have to come from the libertarian right within the Conservative Party, maybe. The trade unions are in the grip of also right-veering, or at least neoliberal veering leaderships. It'll be up to those trade union leaders, the trade union committees, to be able to try and enforce some kind of change or some kind of stance against things that erode worker rights in Britain.
It's interesting because some of that mirrors the contradictions we're facing in the United States, where, for example, some of the loudest anti-war voices come from the right. Now we have the Imperial Party really appearing to be that of the Democrats. So I feel your pain, Afshin. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. It was fascinating as always, and I encourage viewers to watch Afshin's show, Going Underground, on RT UK. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Anya.